All right. Video, audio. Oh no. The National Rifle Association holds its annual meeting in Houston on Friday, but there have been a few cancellations. Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn, Republican, bowed out. I wonder what happened. Did something happen that I don't know about? That something happened that would make it a little uncomfortable for a United States senator to go to the NRA's annual convention in Houston, Texas? I don't know. American Pie singer Don McLean, he also canceled his appearance at the NRA convention. That's odd. Don McLean, big supporter of the National Rifle Association. Don McLean was all scheduled to sing Starry, Starry Night, American Pie, but said, considering what happened this week, it wouldn't be right to show up at the NRA convention. What happened? Did something happen? What could have happened this week that would make proud NRA member Don McLean not want to sing at the NRA? Right. There was another massacre. The massacre in Buffalo, Don McLean was still all in on the NRA. Suddenly, this week, the NRA is bad. What took you so long, Don McLean? Don't you love guns? Don't you love violence, Don McLean? Last year, Don McLean's ex-wife went public saying that her marriage was a nightmare of physical and emotional violence. That would be her marriage to NRA devotee Don McLean. Don McLean's ex-wife claims that Don McLean, NRA member, often punched and kicked her and would wrestle her to the ground while placing her head in a vice-like grip. Don McLean's wife said during violent episodes, he would often rape her. That would be Don McLean. In January of 2016, proud NRA member Don McLean was arrested for domestic abuse. Later that year, proud NRA member Don McLean pleaded guilty to domestic violence assault. He pled guilty to domestic violence. That would be proud NRA member Don McLean, who was going to entertain the NRA on Friday, but something happened and he changed his mind. All those other shootings were okay with Don McLean, but this one, I guess, literally hits too close to home. I guess Houston is a little too close to where that shooting happened. Country and gospel singer Larry Gatlin from the Gatlin Brothers, huge supporter of the National Rifle Association, said today he will not perform tomorrow at the NRA convention, which is odd because Larry Gatlin loves his guns. Isn't there a Gatlin gun? Isn't that he loves firing weapons? That Larry Gatlin loves firing weapons, just not for his country. Larry Gatlin was supposed to serve in Vietnam. He could have played with his weapons over there in Vietnam, but instead he quickly enlisted in the University of Houston to play football so he could get a college deferment. But Lee Greenwood, who is proud to be an American, has not canceled because he's also proud to be a member of the National Rifle Association. Plus, he's pushing 80. Who else is going to hire this POS? Lee Greenwood will be at the NRA convention Friday. Greenwood is currently on his fourth marriage to a former Miss Tennessee. 4 marriages. Hard to believe a lifelong member of the NRA like Lee Greenwood would have problems with women. Well, he does love his guns, doesn't he? Just not enough to fire them overseas for his country. He'll sing to our soldiers on their way to Iraq, but he's not going to go into any foxholes with them. Lee Greenwood was 26 in 1968 and eligible for the draft, but because he had small children, he got himself classified as 3A, so he didn't serve in Vietnam. That's why these cowards hate abortion. Those fetuses are precious. They get you out of serving your country. Lee Greenwood is pro his own life. But you know who will be there Friday night? Asexual Wayne LaPierre. Wayne LaPierre, the asexual chief executive of the National Rifle Association, is going to be there. Never had children. Asexual Wayne LaPierre, chief executive of the National Rifle Association, never fathered any children. According to Vanity Fair, asexual is how one of his co-workers described the asexual Wayne LaPierre. His co-worker told Vanity Fair that asexual Wayne LaPierre is asexual, and he never fathered a child. Asexual Wayne LaPierre, CEO of the National Rifle Association, was draft age during the Vietnam War, but avoided going over there. He loves his guns, but asexual Wayne LaPierre, who's never fathered a child, just couldn't get himself to visit Vietnam during the war. First, he avoided the draft with a student deferment, and then, according to Vanity Fair, he got one of those medical deferments that Donald Trump got. Wayne Anthony Ross, who's a member of the National Rifle Association board, says that asexual Wayne LaPierre, quote, has the backbone of a chocolate eclair. The asexual Wayne LaPierre, according to Vanity Fair and The New Yorker, cannot fire a weapon. The New Yorker last year got its hands on a video of the asexual Wayne LaPierre and his wife, who he's never had children with. They were hunting big game in Africa. And it was essentially a canned hunt. And asexual Wayne LaPierre kept missing the elephant. He was shooting elephants. Isn't that nice? And finally, when the elephant went down, the asexual Wayne LaPierre, this is all on video, the asexual Wayne LaPierre nervously fired at the elephant, missing the elephant 3 times, and they had to do the kill shot for him. And his wife celebrated on the video. She turns out to be a much better shot. While he hates guns, asexual Wayne LaPierre's wife, Susan, loves guns. Maybe that's because she's never had a child with the asexual Wayne LaPierre. Asexual Wayne LaPierre, who runs the National Rifle Association, has never fathered a child, but his wife loves guns. I wonder what that's about. Well, we'll ask the Hirschenfelds. Dr. Philip Hirschenfeld, Freudian psychoanalyst, will explain what his wife's gun obsession is all about. Why, if she's never had a child with the asexual Wayne LaPierre, does she love holding on to something stiff, long, and hard that shoots something? During testimony in the NRA's bankruptcy case, by the way, the NRA has filed for bankruptcy, not just moral bankruptcy, actual bankruptcy. He testified during the NRA's bankruptcy case down in Dallas, and the asexual Wayne LaPierre, did I mention he's never fathered a child? He said during the testimony that after these mass shootings, he runs to his millionaire's luxury yacht. His friend is a millionaire, and his friend has a luxury yacht. And whenever there's a mass shooting, Wayne LaPierre doesn't feel safe because for some reason, whenever there's a mass shooting, we look for somebody to blame. And it's unfair. We blame the guy who's basically a lobbyist for gun manufacturers. So he gets terrified. So to feel safe, he goes on his millionaire friend's luxury yacht. That's the only thing that makes him feel safe. One would think a gun would make asexual Wayne LaPierre, who never fathered a child, safe. One would think that would make him safe. Turns out it's luxury yachts are what keeps us safe, America, not guns. You know who's going to be there? The rapist Donald Trump will be at the National Rifle Association annual meeting in Houston Friday night. At least 30 women have come forward claiming to have been sexually assaulted. That would be raped by Donald Trump. He avoided military service in Vietnam by paying a doctor to say he had, was it bone spurs? I think that's what it was. I'm surprised Donald Trump is showing up this week for the NRA convention. Not a good week for Trump to be in front of the NRA. There are new reports revealing that on January 6th, Donald Trump was elated that the people storming the Capitol were planning to hang Mike Pence. I want to hear Donald Trump explain to the NRA why he didn't want them to shoot Mike Pence. Well, Joe Biden spoke to the American people to assure us that there's absolutely nothing we can do to pass meaningful gun control because the political will just isn't there. Our funeral director in chief, Joe Biden, said it's okay to be angry, but there's nothing we can do about guns. It's beyond our power, so accept it, like death. He's our funeral director in chief. He teaches us to just accept death. It's not our fault. There's nothing we can do. The political will just isn't there. The political will just isn't there. A new Politico Morning Consult poll out this morning shows 75% of Americans support a national database on every single gun purchase made here in the United States. Yes, President Biden, the political will just isn't there. How can you pass meaningful gun legislation? Only 75% of Americans support a national database on every gun purchase. There's nothing we can do, oh great funeral director in chief. Nearly 2/3 of Americans now support an assault weapons ban. 84% of Americans support the police working with mental health professionals to determine who should be allowed to own a gun and who shouldn't. So our funeral director, Joe Biden, our funeral director in chief, he's absolutely right. There's nothing we can do because the political will isn't there. Because, let's face it, American gun violence, it's just an abstraction. It's just something you see on the TV, but nobody has ever, here in America, nobody here has ever come face to face with the dangers of guns, right? According to the Giffords Law Center, as I'm reading you these stats, I want you to think of the people you know who have suffered from guns, okay? During the past 10 years, more than 1 million Americans have been shot by a gun. More than 45,000 Americans died from gunshots in 2020. That's the highest ever. 2021 is going to be worse. I want you to think of someone you know who's been affected by guns. 25 million Americans have been threatened with a gun or injured with a gun by an intimate partner. Each year, 3 million American children are exposed to some sort of gun violence. 3 million American children witness some sort of gun violence. As of 2020, more children die from guns than they do from auto accidents. The day after the shooting on Tuesday, that would be Wednesday, shares of Sturm Ruger rose nearly 6%, Smith & Wesson rose 8%, Vista Outdoor rose 10%. Because when there's a shooting, people buy more guns. It's the virtuous cycle. There's a shooting, people fear the government's going to take away our guns, better buy them now. Or people fear the government isn't going to take away our guns, so you better buy a gun because everybody else has one. And that's why we have 400 million guns that we know of. 400 million guns, that's why here in the United States, more than 8,000 children are shot every year. Guns don't make you safe. They just make the gun manufacturers and their mouthpiece, Wayne LaPierre, rich. Do you know someone who shot themselves to death? Do you know anyone who's been shot or threatened to be shot? It's not an abstraction. Gun violence is not something you just see on the television. We all know someone traumatized by gun violence. All Americans have been exposed to gun violence. Give me a break when you tell me the political will is not there. All of us are in some way personal victims of gun violence, not the trauma of Anderson Cooper talking to a victim, actual gun violence. All of us have been touched by guns. The only Americans not exposed to gun violence are expats living anywhere other than America. We have a gun problem in America. 60% of suicides in America are performed with a gun. Suicide rates triple when there is easy access to a weapon. So, obviously, I agree with Ted Cruz. I know you're angry, but now is not the time to politicize this. Did you see that interview he gave to the BBC? Ted Cruz telling us now is not the time to politicize this. Not when people are mourning. Let's wait till all these shootings have stopped and everyone has stopped mourning, and then it's time to politicize this. You know, the same way it's wrong to ever criticize a war because that's unfair to the troops serving over there and their family. Well, it's wrong to politicize guns when so many Americans are still grieving. Let's wait till all these shootings have stopped, when people are no longer grieving, and then we can have a conversation about guns. I agree with Ted Cruz. We're overreacting. I agree with Ted Cruz, who gets more money from the NRA than any other senator in Washington. It's important right now for Americans to take a deep breath and don't politicize this. And most importantly, don't do anything about it. Well, here's an organization that has stepped up. Our friends over at ICE, America's Immigration Customs Enforcement Division, over at Homeland Security, they announced today that considering the recent tragedy in Uvalde, Texas, ICE has decided to issue a moratorium on rounding up the people who live in Uvalde, Texas. I'm being serious. That's how ICE showed solidarity with the people of Uvalde today by promising not to round them up and put them in for-profit concentration camps. As you all know by now, Uvalde is mostly Hispanic and is a constant target of ICE's. But thanks to the shooting, ICE has given the people of Uvalde a break. So I guess Tuesday was a mixed blessing. By the way, the shooter was an American citizen. He was born in North Dakota. Well, Republicans are saying we have a mental health problem in the country. And I agree. The mentally ill are writing all our gun laws. That's the problem. The Republicans, Greg Abbott, they say we need to identify the mentally ill, take away their guns, and put them in psychiatric holds. That's what the Republicans are saying. Identify who the mentally ill are, take away their guns, then put them in psychiatric holds. Because Republicans are all about freedom. Guns are all about freedom, and nothing makes Americans freer than turning in your neighbor because he made a joke about the Lincoln assassination. Officer, my neighbor trivialized the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. He made a joke about Lincoln being Jewish because Lincoln got shot in the temple, and that joke scared me. I'm afraid he's going to shoot up a temple. You need to arrest my neighbor. And this has nothing to do with his wanting his leaf blower back and my not being able to give it back because I broke it and I can't afford to fix it. That has nothing to do with my turning in my neighbor. He's a threat to the community. And you've been warned, officer. You can't say you haven't been warned now. And if he ends up shooting a movie theater crowd, you can't say you haven't been warned. That's the kind of freedom Republicans want for us. Plenty of guns, right? But to prevent mass shootings, anyone who suggests the slightest pinch of violence, round them up, put them in a psychiatric ward. By the way, that would be everybody who's a Republican. That's an entire party that's just a swirling miasma of violent thoughts. And that's the America I want to live in. You get arrested for saying something that has a hint of violence in it. This, by the way, is the same Republican Party that says there's no such thing as hate speech. People should be allowed to say whatever they want without fear of censorship, right? That's what the Republicans say. But, someone says, I hate Sean Hannity, better call the police. You're a threat to the community. That is exactly how Gitmo got filled up down in Cuba. Gitmo is basically a bunch of unlucky Afghanis turned in by their neighbors. This is true. This is true. Get him, Yankee. Over there, there's a terrorist. That guy's sleeping with my wife. He's a terrorist. Lock him up. That's basically who everybody in Gitmo is. Well, the school shooting on Tuesday. The one on Tuesday down in Texas. Do you remember that one? There have been 28 so far this year, 28 school shootings so far this year. How will we get over Tuesday's mass school shooting? By grieving the next one. We have a problem. We do. And the NRA and the GOP, they too have a problem. They have a messaging problem. Their messaging is starting, it never made sense, but now it's batshit crazy. The important thing to keep in mind is that the GOP and the NRA love the police. At least they say they love the police, but they also say they fear a police state. The NRA and the GOP, they don't love the police. They pretend to love the police, but they hate the police. Don McLean, Donald Trump, they hate the police because the police try to arrest them for raping their wives and their girlfriends. The people who are proud members of the NRA, they don't love the police. They love guns, or at least they love the money from gun manufacturers. And gun manufacturers are terrified of the police because police are terrified of guns. And if the police ever spoke out against guns, then there would be the political will in this country to get rid of guns. But the NRA is showering police unions and police chiefs with money and free training, and they have been co-opted. The police have been co-opted. Police have been co-opted by the NRA. And that's a problem for the NRA right now because they're running out of excuses for these mass shootings. And it's time for the NRA to start blaming the police for all these shootings. That's all who's left. You can't blame the guns. You got to start blaming the police. The NRA, the GOP has a messaging problem. They really do. They have to start blaming the police for these shootings. Go in there, go in there. That's what bystanders reportedly screamed at police officers as they waited nearly 40 minutes for tactical shooters to arrive and take out that 18-year-old kid who massacred 19 elementary school students and 2 teachers in Texas on Tuesday. There is now video of parents trying to get into the school themselves to stop the shooter while the police stayed back.
¿Qué vas a disparar, güey? ¡No es shooting!
The police wouldn't go in for 45 minutes. They wouldn't go in. The police have a lot of explaining to do, and so does the NRA. Meanwhile, President Biden is having trouble getting his pick, Steve Dettelbach, to run the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The Senate mysteriously hasn't been able to confirm an ATF nominee for 7 years. Hearings for Dettelbach were heard the day after the Texas shooting. They were held by the Senate Judiciary Committee. While parents in Texas were still waiting on news of their children, Republican Tom Cotton said to Dettelbach, quote, "It's very telling that you've been nominated by Joe Biden to lead the ATF, and you don't have a definition of an assault weapon." Well, let me tell you something. This is what Cotton said. There really is no such thing as assault weapons. That's what Tom Cotton, the Republican, said the day after the shooting. There really is no such thing as assault weapons. Biden's first pick for ATF chief was dead on arrival. Republicans, including Joe Manchin, well, he's a Democrat, they nixed his nomination of ATF agent David Chipman. David Chipman is an ATF agent, and the Republicans, Joe Manchin, said no go because Chipman called for an assault weapons ban. I don't understand this. Republican Tom Cotton says there's no such thing as assault weapons. So how can you be worried about somebody trying to ban something that doesn't exist? And again, Tom Cotton wants to ban critical race theory, and that doesn't exist. He also wants to ban people from coming over the border. That problem doesn't exist. So if we're banning things that don't exist, Tom Cotton, why don't we ban assault weapons? They don't exist. Why are you worrying about banning something that doesn't exist? I'll tell you what, Senator Tom Cotton, if assault weapons don't exist, then you should have no problem with banning them, right? Why are you protecting the rights of Americans to buy something that doesn't exist? Then again, Americans buy Tom Cotton's patriotism, which doesn't exist, so forget I even mentioned this. Tom Cotton. Salvador Ramos, the shooter, American citizen, reportedly crashed his truck, grabbed one of his two AR-15s. Had two AR-15s, and before going into the school, he shot at two bystanders outside a funeral home. Well, that's efficient. Before he even entered the school, police arrived on the scene, not to mention the police officer already assigned to the school inside the school. Here's what we think we know now. Ramos reportedly headed for the school, where he was confronted by an armed police officer assigned, whose job it was to protect the school from somebody like Ramos. Shots may have been exchanged between the school's police officer and the shooter, and then he entered the school. Well then, why didn't the police officer follow him in? The police officer was a good guy with a gun. Why didn't the police officer follow him in to protect the students? I mean, I don't understand this. Shouldn't he have followed Ramos in and taken him out? I thought the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. If Ramos had an AR-15, why wasn't the police officer assigned to that school also carrying 3 or 4 AR-15s? See where I'm going with this? You're already there. I'm just articulating what all of you are thinking. 2 other police officers arrived on the scene. They too exchanged gunfire with Ramos, and Ramos injured both. Then it took 40 minutes to an hour for a team of tactical shooters to arrive. And during that time, Ramos reportedly massacred 19 elementary school students and 2 teachers. Why did it take a team of specialized shooters close to an hour to arrive? See where I'm going with this? The Republicans and the NRA have a messaging problem. Are the NRA and the Republicans willing to blame the good guys with a gun? That has to be their next move. Turns out the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a great guy with a gun. Good guys no longer cut it. And I think the NRA and the Republicans have to start saying this. We have a problem. We don't have enough good guys with guns. We have a problem with the police. That's what the NRA and the Republican Party have to start doing. They need to start blaming the police. That will turn out well for them politically, won't it? On February 14th, 2018, armed with pretty much the identical AR-15 used on Tuesday, 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz shot up Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, massacring 17 people, injuring 17 others. 4 years later, this year, former Broward Sheriff's Office deputy Scott Peterson, he was the armed good guy with a gun who had been stationed with a gun at the high school that day. He was in uniform with a gun. He is now going on trial, facing charges of 7 counts of child neglect, 3 counts of culpable negligence, and 1 count of perjury. He is facing criminal charges for cowardice. This is a police officer being blamed for the massacre at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, on Valentine's Day of 2018. He is being accused of acting like a coward with a gun. In fact, that's his nickname, the Coward of Broward. The official policy is the shooting was all his fault and his fault only. Not the AR-15, the cop not wanting to get killed. It's his fault. He would have been killed. He was outgunned. But they're blaming him, not the guns. That's Florida. CNN reported 10 days after the shooting that 4 police officers eventually arrived at the scene. Talking about Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, the shooting there. 4 police officers eventually arrived at the scene while the gunman was still in the school shooting. But those 4 officers, they too did not go in. That's 5. Then 3 other officers eventually arrived and they went into the school. But the 4 officers who arrived first on the scene, they wouldn't go in. They wouldn't join them. And that stunned local police officers who accused those 4 police officers of cowardice for not going in. That's all according to CNN. During a candlelight vigil for the victims the next day, Coral Springs city manager Mike Goodrum reportedly got into a heated shouting match with Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel, demanding to know why his officers stood down. There was a good guy with a gun. There were 4 guys with a gun, police officers, about 4 police officers with guns. They did not follow the shooter into the building. They did not go in there. Why not? What could they have been afraid of? During a press conference after the shooting, Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel said he was disappointed by his officers' response, saying, quote, "You don't wait for SWAT, you get in there and you push towards the shooter." One of Scott Peterson's, that's the police officer who's on trial now for the shooting in Florida, one of Scott Peterson's supervisors told reporters Peterson was a disgrace. A survivor of the shooting told reporters Officer Peterson was, quote, "an awful human being." One of America's police unions issued a statement calling Officer Peterson, quote, "a blight on law enforcement." Personally, I think police unions are a blight on law enforcement, but that's for another show. President Donald Trump weighed in and said, quote, "when it came time to get in there and do something, Officer Peterson didn't have the courage." And then Trump famously said, had he been there, he would have gone in there without a gun. The Washington Post interviewed Officer Peterson. He said he didn't know where the shots were coming from and, quote, "I didn't have time to think. I didn't have time to think." This was all Officer Scott Peterson's fault. Fred Guttenberg lost his daughter in the Parkland shooting. When he discovered Officer Scott Peterson didn't follow the shooter into the building, Guttenberg said he hopes Peterson rots in hell. According to the New York Times, Guttenberg said of Peterson, "He could have saved some of the 17. He could have saved my daughter. He did not, and he deserves the misery coming his way." Ouchie wouchie. The Washington Post reports that after the shooting, Officer Peterson was sued by the parents of one of the victims. In the lawsuit, it says, quote, "Scott Peterson is a coward. Officer Peterson did nothing. Officer Peterson waited and listened to the din of screams of teachers and students, many of whom were dead and dying. He let innocent people die." That's what the lawyers suing Scott Peterson wrote. Florida Department of Law Enforcement conducted a 15-month investigation and concluded that then 56-year-old police officer Scott Peterson, quote, did absolutely nothing to mitigate the shooting. The investigators concluded, quote, there can be no excuse for Officer Peterson's complete inaction and no question that his inaction cost lives. The investigation said when officers arrived on the scene, Officer Scott Peterson instructed them to remain 500 feet away from the school while gunshots were going off inside the school. And they listened to him. They didn't go in. Interesting. Why was Officer Peterson telling his fellow officers not to go in there? Why was he saying it wasn't safe for them? I wonder what could have been going on inside that school that made them so afraid. Well, after that report came out, Peterson was arrested. Prosecutors were especially mad because Peterson had extensive training on how to deal with an active shooter. So he should have gone in. Peterson said he couldn't, it was happening so fast, he couldn't figure it out. See, there's a problem for the NRA and the Republicans because the time has come for them to start blaming the police. We have a problem. We either have a problem with AR-15s or we have a problem with the guns. And the NRA gets all its money from gun manufacturers, so they're left with no choice but to start blaming the police for not doing their jobs, which is odd because whenever there's a mass shooting, the NRA always says we need more armed police. The NRA, which is all about self-defense, can no longer defend their argument. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. That's now indefensible. In Buffalo, 2 weeks ago, there was a good guy with a gun, a retired cop. He was working as a security guard inside that supermarket. And when shots were fired, the good guy with the gun fired back. And the bad guy with the gun killed the good guy with the gun. And the good guy with the gun was a cop. You can't do any better than that when it comes to security. Having the good guy with a gun being a cop. These are cops on the scene with guns before the massacre even started. Well, we can't say they're outgunned if you're the NRA, because we want, if you're the NRA, we want to sell more and more guns. So it's got to be the fault of our cops. That's it. I think the NRA has a serious messaging problem because they now have to start attacking the police for not stepping up. According to the CDC, more children were killed this year in school shootings than all the on-duty police officers in America. Clearly, it is more dangerous to be a child going to school than it is to be a police officer. So it is time for Wayne LaPierre to come out of hiding. Did I say, the asexual Wayne LaPierre. It's time for asexual Wayne LaPierre to come out of hiding and do his job. Call American cops cowards. That's all you're left with now, Wayne LaPierre. You have to start calling American cops cowards. That's the only explanation. We keep saying cops on the scene whenever there's a mass shooting. They don't go in there. They do nothing. Apparently, the good guys with the guns care more about their own lives than those of our precious children. That is the argument the NRA must make. That's all they're left with. Because you can't sell any more guns to the police. They have enough weapons. American police they're holding weapons of war. And I mean that seriously. When the troops come home from Iraq, the Pentagon gives their weapons, their tanks to the police. We spare no cost when it comes to spending on the police. You can't say they don't have enough weapons Wayne LaPierre, you're going to have to say they're cowards. This is a problem for the NRA because the NRA has been courting the police ever since the assault weapons ban of 1994. The NRA trains our police for free. The NRA spends millions of its own money handing over to, police benevolent associations, paying unions, hiring police. The NRA has done everything it can to make sure the police buy more weapons and buy into the NRA. I don't know. Can the NRA and the GOP summon the courage to call cops cowards? We are told that thousands of children getting shot each year is a small price to pay for our Second Amendment freedoms. It then follows that more dead cops would be a small price to pay for our Second Amendment freedoms as well. That should be the NRA's argument. Go in there, go into the building, copper, and kill the shooter. That's the only thing left for the NRA to say. They need to start saying the problem is not enough cops willing to die. Or maybe they can make the argument that we need better guys with guns. In other words, deputize all the good guys in America, not just the cops. Let's find out who the good guys are and give them guns. We need more good guys with guns. Have the NRA administer a test so you can be a card-carrying good guy who is licensed to carry a gun. Oh, wait, that would be a test to be a good guy. That means it's a license to certify you to get a gun. No, that's the NRA would never be for that. So, you know what? Everyone should just have the freedom to decide whether or not they're a good guy. And if they decide they're a good guy, then they should just be issued an assault weapon that's paid for by the states. That would work, right? Anyone who decides they're a good guy should be given a standard issue AR-15, and they should self-deputize, patrol our schools, our churches, our streets. Obviously, the police need more Kyle Rittenhouses doing backup for them. Folks, the pro-gun debate has more holes in it than Sonny at the Causeway. I used to write for Dennis Miller, Old Habits Die Hard. The pro-gun debate has more holes in it than Sonny at the Causeway. They have a messaging problem, the NRA. The argument Wayne LaPierre and the GOP make is that government is the enemy. They warn us of a totalitarian regime, and they say the only way to prevent a police state is a well-armed citizenry. Many, if not most, of the nut jobs who are the gun manufacturers' best customers, they tend to be militia, separatists, right-wing preppers, and they don't want the government taxing them, raising their children, or telling them how to live the lives. Not telling them how to live their lives, right? They don't want a police state, so they buy guns. And the instrument of a police state is the police. You can't have a police state without police. So if you buy guns, if you're the NRA, you are diametrically opposed to the police. If you're stockpiling guns to prevent a police state, then your natural enemy is the police. And if you're a police officer who doesn't want to get killed, your natural enemy is the NRA and the GOP and everyone else who believes that anyone should be allowed to buy an assault weapon so they can take on the police.